$14.7 million. That is what Prince Harry and Meghan Markle paid for their supposed forever home in Montecito, California, back in 2020. They called it their sanctuary, their escape from the suffocating confines of royal life, their ticket to freedom and happiness in the Golden State. And now, just a few years later, sources are revealing that the couple is actively exploring real estate options in Florida because their California dream has become an absolute nightmare. Let that sink in for a moment. The same couple who made such a theatrical exit from the United Kingdom, who sat down with Oprah and told the world they had finally found peace, who proclaimed Montecito as their permanent home, is now reportedly desperate to flee once again. The rumors have been swirling for weeks now, but insiders are finally confirming what many suspected. Harry and Meghan feel trapped in their own mansion, isolated from the very community they tried so hard to infiltrate. One source close to the situation put it bluntly, saying the neighbors have grown cold and the local elite want nothing to do with them anymore. The couple who thought they could waltz into California high society and be embraced as American royalty has discovered a brutal truth. Money cannot buy you acceptance, and a title means nothing when you have burned every bridge behind you. But here is what makes this story so much more explosive than a simple change of address. This potential move to Florida is not just about geography or sunshine or even the complete absence of state income tax, though I am sure that plays a role. This is about a complete and total reinvention of a brand that has failed spectacularly on every possible level. The Sussexes are not just looking for a new house, they are looking for a new identity, a new audience, and frankly, a new group of people to convince that they are worth caring about. Sources describe the atmosphere inside that Montecito mansion as increasingly tense. Harry allegedly feels more isolated than ever, cut off from his family, his country, and now even the celebrity friends who once lined up to support him. Meghan, according to those familiar with the situation, remains determined to push forward with her various business ventures, but even she reportedly recognizes that something fundamental has broken in their American experiment. The couple who promised us they were building a new life of purpose and authenticity is now scrambling to figure out what comes next. And folks, the reasons behind this potential Florida move reveal just how badly everything has crumbled around them. The year was 2020, and the world was watching as Prince Harry and Meghan Markle made the boldest move in modern royal history. They walked away from the British monarchy, traded their titles for freedom, and landed in California with promises of a brand new chapter. The media coverage was breathless. Here was a prince and his American bride, escaping the stuffy constraints of palace life to build something meaningful in the land of opportunity. They purchased that stunning $14.7 million mansion in Montecito, complete with 16 bathrooms, a tennis court, a pool, and enough space to host all the Hollywood elite who were supposedly clamoring to be their friends. The narrative they sold to the world was intoxicating. Privacy, peace, purpose. Meghan would finally be free to speak her truth without palace handlers monitoring her every word. Harry would escape the goldfish bowl of royal existence and become his own man. Together, they would launch Arkwell, their charitable foundation, and sign massive deals with Netflix and Spotify that would fund their philanthropic dreams while proving they could thrive outside the royal system. It sounded perfect. It sounded like a fairy tale ending for the couple who claimed the original fairy tale had turned into a nightmare. But let us be brutally honest about what the current reality actually looks like. That mansion in Montecito has become less of a sanctuary and more of a gilded prison. The Hollywood support system that once seemed so eager to embrace them has largely evaporated. The Netflix deal that was supposed to showcase their star power has produced underwhelming content that failed to capture public interest. The Spotify partnership ended in disaster, complete with a company executive publicly calling Meghan a grifter. And the neighbors, those wealthy Montecito residents who were initially curious about their royal additions, have reportedly made it crystal clear that the Sussexes are not welcome in their social circles. Florida represents something entirely different for this floundering couple. It is Trump territory, a conservative stronghold where the political winds blow in the opposite direction from liberal Los Angeles. It offers no state income tax, which would be enormously beneficial for a couple who have reportedly been burning through their fortune at an alarming rate. And perhaps most importantly, it provides access to an entirely different social scene. Palm Beach society, with its old money aristocrats and business tycoons, offers a path to acceptance that Hollywood has firmly denied them. But to truly understand why Harry and Meghan are apparently running from California, we need to expose the false promises that started this entire disaster in the first place. The foundation of Harry and Meghan's American adventure was built on a series of promises that sources now say were destined to fail from the very beginning. According to multiple royal insiders, Meghan made specific assurances to Harry about what leaving the royal family would accomplish, particularly regarding his relationships with Prince William and Catherine. She allegedly convinced him that their departure would force the royals to finally respect them, to recognize their value, and ultimately to come crawling back begging for reconciliation. It was a stunning miscalculation that has had devastating consequences. One royal insider revealed the reaction inside palace walls when Harry apparently believed his family would beg for his return. The source said bluntly that people thought he was smoking dope. The absolute delusion required to believe that the 1,000-year-old British monarchy would somehow capitulate to the demands of one junior prince, and his wife was breathtaking in its naivety. And yet, according to those who were privy to conversations at the time, Harry genuinely believed this would happen. He trusted that Meghan understood how these dynamics worked, that her strategy would prove correct, and that his family would eventually see the error of their ways. Allow me to translate what actually happened. The royal family did not come crawling back. William and Catherine did not suddenly recognize the Sussexes as the valuable assets Meghan apparently promised they would be seen as. Instead, the monarchy continued on without them, perhaps even thrived without the constant drama and controversy that seemed to follow Harry and Meghan wherever they went. The relationship between the brothers deteriorated further. The relationship between Harry and his father became strained to the breaking point, and the promised reconciliation never materialized because, shockingly, the British royal family did not appreciate being publicly attacked on international television. Sources close to Harry describe him as increasingly aware that he was sold a bill of goods. The man who gave up everything, his country, his military career, his relationships with family members he had known his entire life, is allegedly starting to realize that the promises made to him may never come true. One insider described him as haunted by the thought that he cannot undo what has been done. Another suggested that Harry privately expresses regret about burning bridges that can never be rebuilt. These broken promises about royal reconciliation were just the beginning of a pattern that is now catching up with both of them in devastating fashion. The Montecito social scene was supposed to be Harry and Meghan's triumphant entry into American high society. This exclusive enclave, home to billionaires, Hollywood legends, and cultural icons, seemed like the perfect place for a prince and his glamorous wife to establish themselves. Oprah Winfrey lived nearby. Ellen DeGeneres was in the neighborhood. The area practically dripped with celebrity connections and influential power players. Surely the Sussexes would be welcomed with open arms into this rarefied world. The reality has been nothing short of humiliating. Sources now report that their celebrity neighbors have systematically distanced themselves from Harry and Meghan over the past several years. The much-publicized friendship with Oprah has notably cooled, with insiders suggesting that the media mogul has grown weary of being associated with the couple's constant controversies. Ellen DeGeneres, who once seemed eager to showcase her connection to the Sussexes, is reportedly nowhere to be seen these days. The star-studded dinner parties and high-profile social events that Meghan allegedly expected to dominate have apparently not materialized. Local community sources paint an even more damning picture. One resident who spoke on condition of anonymity said flatly that the Sussexes are not part of the fabric of Montecito society. They described the couple as people who wanted the prestige of the address without actually integrating into the community. Another source suggested that Harry and Meghan's constant public drama and victim narratives have made potential friends uncomfortable. Nobody wants to be dragged into their media circus. The insider explained, "It is just not worth the headache." Perhaps the most heartbreaking detail to emerge involves Harry himself. Reports indicate that he has been spotted alone in Montecito with increasing frequency, looking, according to witnesses, lost and disconnected. One source described seeing him at a local establishment appearing completely isolated, a far cry from the confident prince who once commanded respect simply by walking into a room. The support system he abandoned in the United Kingdom, his friends, his military comrades, his family, has not been replaced by anything comparable in California. He traded a lifetime of relationships for a wife who insiders claim prioritizes her career ambitions over his emotional well-being. But the social isolation they are experiencing in Montecito is absolutely nothing compared to what has happened to their professional empire. The Spotify disaster will go down in history as one of the most spectacular celebrity partnership failures of the modern era. When Harry and Meghan signed their exclusive deal with the streaming giant, reportedly worth around $25 million, it was heralded as proof that the couple could monetize their fame on their own terms. They would produce podcasts that showcased their perspectives, amplified important voices, and demonstrated their value as content creators. The reality turned out to be staggeringly different from the promise. After producing virtually nothing of substance for an extended period, and then finally releasing Meghan's Archetypes podcast to modest reception, Spotify terminated the partnership entirely. But the truly devastating moment came when Bill Simmons, a high-profile Spotify executive, went on his own podcast and called Meghan a grifter. He said it publicly, without apparent fear of repercussion, suggesting that this sentiment was widely shared within the company. Let that sink in for a moment. A major media executive felt comfortable publicly labeling a duchess, a woman who constantly lectures the world about kindness and empathy, as someone who takes without giving back. The ripple effects of that grifter comment have been felt throughout Hollywood. Industry insiders report that the Sussexes are now viewed with deep suspicion by potential partners and collaborators. One entertainment executive described them as more trouble than they are worth. Another suggested that any project associated with them carries a stigma that makes investors nervous. The couple, who arrived in Los Angeles expecting to be courted by every studio and streaming platform in town, has discovered that their reputation precedes them in the worst possible way. The Netflix relationship, their remaining major entertainment partnership, is reportedly hanging by a thread. The Polo documentary they produced underperformed expectations so dramatically that sources describe the streaming giant as deeply disappointed with their investment. While Netflix has not publicly terminated the relationship, insiders suggest that the enthusiasm that once surrounded the Sussex partnership has completely evaporated. One source familiar with the situation said that Netflix executives are basically waiting out the contract at this point, unwilling to invest significant resources in future Sussex projects. With Hollywood's doors slamming shut one after another, Harry and Meghan have reportedly started looking at an unlikely new home base that could represent their most dramatic reinvention yet. Florida might seem like an unusual choice for a couple who have positioned themselves as progressive champions of social justice causes, but when you examine the strategic logic, it begins to make a disturbing kind of sense. First and foremost, Florida has no state income tax. For a couple who reportedly earn millions annually, but spend even more lavishly, this financial benefit is not trivial. California's top income tax rate approaches 14%. Moving to Florida would immediately put millions of additional dollars in their pockets without them having to do a single thing differently. But the tax advantages are just the beginning of Florida's appeal for this desperate duo. The state represents Trump territory, a conservative stronghold where the political and social dynamics are radically different from the liberal Hollywood elite who have grown tired of the Sussexes. This signals the possibility of what insiders are calling a political realignment. The couple, who once seemed firmly planted in progressive circles, may be calculating that their future lies in courting an entirely different audience. And frankly, given how badly they have alienated their original supporters, this might be their only viable path forward. Palm Beach society offers something that Hollywood never could: old money acceptance based on lineage and title rather than current relevance or recent achievements. The wealthy families who have called Palm Beach home for generations are more likely to be impressed by Harry's royal bloodline than by streaming numbers or podcast downloads. For Meghan, who reportedly craves the kind of social status that has eluded her in Montecito, this could represent a fresh opportunity to climb ladders that do not care about her entertainment industry failures. The proximity to Mar-a-Lago and the Trump-adjacent crowd opens potential doors to conservative media and business opportunities that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. Sources suggest that Harry and Meghan's team has quietly explored what connections might be possible in these circles. The irony is absolutely staggering. The same couple who seemed to align themselves against the Trump worldview during their Oprah interview may now be calculating that their survival depends on cozying up to exactly those people they once appeared to criticize. But this potential Florida move has reportedly sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace for a very specific and deeply troubling reason. The reaction from senior palace officials to the Florida rumors has been one of deep concern, bordering on alarm. Sources close to the royal household suggest that the potential move is being interpreted as something far more significant than a simple change of address. If Harry and Meghan establish themselves in Trump-friendly Florida circles, palace advisors worry it could signal a willingness to align with individuals and media outlets that have been openly hostile to the British monarchy itself. One senior royal source described the palace mood as deeply unsettled by these developments. The concern is that Harry might be drawn into circles that actively seek to undermine the institution he was born into. Conservative American media figures have not exactly been kind to the royal family in recent years, and the prospect of a British prince providing access or legitimacy to monarchy critics is apparently keeping palace officials up at night. The strategic implications of such a move, both politically and in terms of public relations, are being analyzed with growing urgency in London. Prince William's reported reaction has been notably different from the institutional concern. Sources close to the future king suggest that he has essentially reached the end of his patience with his younger brother's decisions. One insider claimed that William told confidants he is done trying to understand Harry at this point. The relationship between the brothers, once described as unbreakable, has apparently deteriorated to a point where William no longer expends emotional energy attempting to predict or comprehend Harry's choices. Whether his brother moves to Florida or Mars, the source suggested, William has accepted that the Harry he grew up with is simply gone. The broader royal family is reportedly struggling to process what a Florida move would mean for any hope of future reconciliation. The geographic distance between California and the United Kingdom is already substantial. Florida adds additional miles, but more importantly, it adds cultural and political distance that many believe would be impossible to bridge. If Harry immerses himself in American conservative circles that view the monarchy with skepticism or outright hostility, palace insiders question whether any relationship with his family could survive. But while palace officials and Prince William process this news with varying degrees of resignation, King Charles is said to have a very different and far more emotional reaction to what his youngest son might be planning. King Charles III is reportedly heartbroken by the prospect of his son moving even further away, both geographically and emotionally, from everything Harry once represented. Despite everything that has happened, despite the Oprah interview, despite the Netflix documentary, despite the memoir that exposed private family conversations and painted Charles in an unflattering light, sources maintain that the king still harbors hope for reconciliation. This hope, according to those close to Charles, persists against all logic and evidence. The king's ongoing health battle has added a layer of urgency and poignancy to this family drama that cannot be ignored. Charles is not a young man dealing with a difficult child. He is a monarch facing health challenges while simultaneously watching his son drift further away with every passing month. Insiders claim that Charles has privately expressed profound worry that he may never have a real relationship with his grandchildren, Archie and Lilibet. The thought that he might never truly know these children, never be a meaningful presence in their lives, is said to cause him genuine anguish. One source who has spoken with Charles described the situation as a wound that refuses to heal. Every public statement from Harry and Meghan, every interview, every hint of another project exposing royal family secrets reportedly reopens that wound. And yet, the source added, Charles cannot seem to fully give up on Harry. There is something in him that still sees the little boy he raised, not the man who has repeatedly chosen to attack his family on the world stage. Whether this represents admirable paternal devotion or painful delusion is a matter of perspective. The potential Florida move reportedly intensifies all of these concerns exponentially. Florida is not just another American state to the king. It represents a particular political and cultural environment that palace advisors view as potentially hostile to everything the monarchy represents. The thought of Harry being absorbed into circles that might encourage further attacks on the institution Charles has spent his entire life preparing to lead is said to keep the king awake at night. Meanwhile, as the palace processes these developments and Charles wrestles with his heartbreak, serious questions are mounting about what Prince Harry himself actually wants from his life. The body language analysts and royal watchers who have observed Harry in recent public appearances paint a troubling picture of a man who does not appear to be thriving. Gone is the confident, charismatic prince who once lit up every room he entered. In his place, observers describe someone who looks tired, uncertain, and increasingly unhappy. One expert who analyzed Harry's recent public outings suggested that his body language reveals profound internal conflict. The smile that once came so easily now appears forced, and his eyes tell a very different story than his words. Sources close to the couple describe significant tension over the fundamental direction of their lives. Meghan's career ambitions, her various business ventures, her apparent desire to become a major American celebrity in her own right, reportedly clash with Harry's more ambivalent feelings about their current path. Some insiders suggest that Harry privately expresses longing for elements of his old life, the military camaraderie, the sense of purpose, the family connections that gave his existence meaning. But these longings cannot be voiced publicly without undermining the narrative he and Meghan have worked so hard to construct. The Florida move, according to multiple sources, is primarily Meghan's idea. She reportedly views it as an opportunity to reinvent their brand and access new social and business networks. Harry, on the other hand, is described as emotionally torn about the prospect. Moving to Florida would take him even further from his homeland, from his family, and from any realistic possibility of reconnecting with the life he left behind. For a man who already appears to be struggling with the choices he has made, this decision reportedly weighs heavily on him. One insider described Harry as caught between two impossible options. If he resists the Florida move and insists on staying in California, he faces continued professional failure and social isolation. If he agrees to relocate and throws himself into building a new life in Florida, he essentially closes the door on any hope of returning to his family fold. Either way, the source suggested, Harry is looking at a future defined by what he has lost rather than what he might gain. All of this family drama and personal turmoil leads inevitably to one explosive question about what happens next for this increasingly troubled couple. The crossroads at which Harry and Meghan now find themselves could not be more stark or consequential. A move to Florida would represent the ultimate reinvention of their brand, an acknowledgement that the California dream they sold to the world has completely failed, and that they require yet another fresh start in yet another location. But it would also likely serve as the final nail in the coffin of any royal reconciliation. The palace sources are clear on this point. If Harry moves to Florida and immerses himself in circles that are hostile to the monarchy, whatever thin thread still connects him to his family will almost certainly snap forever. The alternative, staying in California and attempting to salvage what remains of their Hollywood ambitions, hardly looks more promising. The entertainment industry has largely closed its doors to them. Their Montecito neighbors want nothing to do with them. The social scene they hope to dominate has frozen them out completely. Staying put means accepting failure and isolation while hoping that somehow, some way, public sentiment shifts in their favor. Given the current trajectory, that hope seems almost delusional. Their public relations team is reportedly working overtime to spin this potential move as a positive lifestyle choice rather than a desperate escape from failure. Expect carefully placed stories about Florida's family-friendly environment, about the sunshine being better for the children, about exciting new opportunities on the East Coast. The spin will be aggressive and relentless because it has to be. The alternative narrative, that Harry and Meghan are fleeing California because their American dream has turned into an American nightmare, is simply too damaging to acknowledge publicly. What makes this situation so fascinating and frankly so tragic is watching a prince who once had everything: position, privilege, family, purpose, sacrifice it all for a new life that has delivered none of what was promised. Harry left behind a country that loved him, a grandmother who adored him, a brother who was his best friend, and a role that gave his life meaning. In exchange, he received a mansion in a neighborhood that does not want him, business deals that ended in public humiliation, and the growing realization that the promises that led him here may never come true. The coming months will reveal whether Harry has the courage to assert his own vision for his future, or whether he will continue following a path that seems designed by someone else. The Florida move, if it happens, will answer that question definitively. But for now, the former prince and his wife sit in their $14.7 million prison, surrounded by luxury, but starved of the acceptance and purpose they so desperately crave. Do you think Harry will actually go through with abandoning California, or is this just another desperate public relations distraction designed to change the narrative about their failing brand? Drop your thoughts below, like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The next video is waiting, and you will not believe what is coming next.